database. How do you get Mona Lisa in a database? How do you order art? How do you index art? How do you index nameless or anonymous art? And that's what we're going to talk about. You have the floor.
Thank you. Okay, I hope the audio works, because from here it sounds funny, but if you can't hear me, just put up your hand. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about fits slightly to the talk that Michael Nielsen was giving yesterday about modern electronic stuff, wikis and blogs use in science as for hard science. And I'm going to talk about, the essays of our small group within the Max Planck Institute for History of Science in trying to establish software tools and make the modern tools that are there, including the internet, available to scholars working in the humanities and in cultural heritage. So I'm not covering all of the stuff that is done in culture, like also Wikipedia and others, but mostly focusing on what our institute is doing, which is mostly concerned with historical sources, which is what historians work on, and which is also closely related to the area of cultural heritage, which is what museums, collections, collectors are dealing with, so the artifacts and objects and old texts and other stuff. So I'm going to, I've already been on the first point, what I mean with humanities and cultural heritage, then briefly show that what the dreams and possibilities that are there with the new technologies, the internet and other stuff, and then briefly focusing on some of the, so to say, political issues around copyright, owner's right, and access to the sources and open access movement. And then I'm going to show some of the, so to say, technical issues which are around how do you deal with images, with large text, with bibliographical databases. Why do we have to try to invent new tools for the scholars to use? So with the internet, I mean, these days when you look at Wikipedia and others, you really have the impression that a network of all human knowledge, past and present, is really going to be possible to at least to be close at hand. And the stuff that additionally you can do in electronic form, like when you have a scanned image of an old rare book, then you can make it accessible to everybody on the internet, and he does not have to come to a special library, he does not have to gain access and talk to people or be told the way, and also, a slight side point of this is, for example, that in developing countries where historical or at least cultural artifacts are used and brought to the internet, often it is easier for the people also in developing countries to be able to access them over the internet than to be able to go somewhere and try to go to some museum. And then there's also the points of sustainability that, we had the case in Germany just a few months ago where the archive of the city of Cologne was fell into a hole made by subway construction, and around, the material artifacts of around 1,000 years of city history were very much endangered of being lost. And in all these cases, it would be good to have as much of it digitized on the internet and in other electronic archives as possible. There's also other cases. I'm briefly showing a project dealing with cuneiform clay tablets, where some of the clay tablets that you can see in the electronic archive do no longer exist anymore because they were in Baghdad and got destroyed or taken away. So there is really also sustainability, a preserving aspect of electronic representations. And adding to the network effect, of course, the point is that to be able to do mash-ups, to link from one text into the sources and back, all the material should be as freely accessible as possible. So if you make a link on some site to cite the page of a book, first of all, it has to be possible to just link to this certain page, and also you cannot do that when then a dialogue pops up that forces you to pay money or to register, and you're not registered and maybe you're not allowed. So a lot of all these internet tools only work or best work when all the material is really freely accessible and caution is taken to make it really integratable with other sources. So what I'm briefly showing, two examples from our institute and another older example which I think also shows some of the problems that many of the projects in the area of cultural heritage have or had so far. One of the projects is the is that my mic? It's CDLI, it's the Cuneiform Digital Library Initiative, which deals with cuneiform text, so these clay tablets made in Mesopotamia and Babylon 3,500 years ago. And the idea of CDLI is to collect all of these texts and try to get them together in a database, because currently all of them are spread all over the world. So also specimens that were found just next to each other and had some context with each other. One may be in a private collection in New York and the other may be in a museum in St. Petersburg. So this is really one of the things that the internet makes possible, to create such collections that really interrelate things, or make it possible to interrelate things that are in different pieces of the world, and you don't have to travel to place A and place B. And maybe now you can discover new things which were not really possible to discover before. This is one of the older projects, and at least its online version has been online since 2001, which is rather early in internet times. And currently it has more than 200,000 texts in its catalog, of which I haven't counted in the last days, but of which around, I think, 70,000 are with high-resolution images, so you can really see it from all sides and hopefully read the inscriptions, which sometimes is difficult because pieces are broken off, and 40,000 with where the text is also transliterated in a special format that can be read by the scholars. So this is the project website. The project is jointly developed by the University of California, Los Angeles, and the Max Planck Institute for History of Science. And so you have a web form for searching, which also enables full text search in the transliterations, and a search with the normal catalog stuff, which is what most of the scholars were used to. And when, for example, you do a full text search, you get something like that. So you get if I search for the term udu, which, as I've been told, means sheep, you find that in a text, and you get a list of the text with the transcriptions, catalog information, and images of the text. If you're looking on a single text, you also have a big image of the text and a lot of the catalog information. And another thing which was started quite early in this project is that they also have an electronic journal, which is in HTML form and which uses, cannot really see this here so well, which also uses links into the catalog database, so that when you see here they're talking about tablet so-and-so, you can click on it and you can really see the image of the tablet and the transliterations and the catalog information about that, which is really a big win compared to the normal publications where it just said the catalog number and then you had to somehow be able to go to the museum, get it out of the catalog if they let you, and so on. So it really makes the text more accessible and also easier for the reader to be able to also criticize what the author was talking about. Because you can look at the same sources in the same way as the author did. So another project is the Virtual Laboratory of Physiology, which it was called. Now it's more not only physiology, but trying to expand into more of life sciences around the 19th century, early 20th century. We had a first version created or thought up in 1997 and an online version since 2001. They have rather extensive library of 32,000 items, articles, catalogs, containing at about more than 200,000 pages. And the idea here is a little like with the cuneiform library, the idea that you reconstruct the working environment of a scientist working in physiology at the 19th century. So you have try to get all the sources about that were accessible at that time, descriptions of all the sites that were involved, catalogs about the instruments used, biographies, very detailed biographies about the scientists involved, and also all of it is cross-linked so that when you go to the biography page, you also see all the articles that scientist has written or linked in which laboratories he has worked. And they also have a very funny picture of the month program now that where they have curious pictures where you can provide your own comment or tagline to the picture. And for example, here you see a part of the technology section. So they try to take all descriptions of the apparatuses that were used out of catalogs or articles about these objects. And they also have full text, well, at least display with scanned articles for all the scientific articles and also the catalogs where you can also zoom in and do other stuff with the text. And something rather new is the idea that you can have something like a shopping basket system where you can log in and go through the whole site and pick up objects that you want to mesh together, or if you are preparing a course, then you can put up things that your students are supposed to look at. And we found that very helpful to take over this idea of having an electronic shopping basket, because also the researchers immediately understood this, and so that was quite a success to use that. So another older project, so these are ones where I would say that are on a good way and are developed using open source technologies and open access material. And another project where, well, we know of is the Thesaurus Florentinus, which was a project about the acquisition and reconstruction of the mural paintings in the dome cupola of the big dome Santa Maria del Fiore in Florence. So they took tens of thousands of photographs before, during, and after the reconstruction, and had a big computer system and software to interlink, and because it was a dome, also project all the images. And people always told me that it's a really stunning system where 20 or 30 people put in data for almost 10 years. And so they could really say, well, this crack went there, and so this way it looked before and then after. And so the project started with a reconstruction in 92, and it officially ended in 2000. And the problem is that there's nothing left of this project. So as far as we know, all the data and the database, the handwritten database, is on a single RS6000 computer in Florence, and which is, as far as I know, not connected to the internet, and because it's their own handwritten database and image format and all of that, it's not even possible to get the data out, and which is quite a shame. And we spoke with some people of the municipal side. There were also one company, Intech, that did the development, and now they're in medical imaging and called differently. And they said, well, what can you help us get out the data in some format so we can present it on the internet or do something else with it? And they said, no, we want at least 100,000 euros. And they said, well, we don't have so much. Well, then forget it. And so much of the data just rests on this one machine, and it's very unlikely, unless somebody goes in re-engineering, that all the effort that has put in there is ever going to benefit anybody else. So we really try to stress the point that the software development, and also, if possible, the data formats should be open source and open access, so that it's possible to reuse it afterwards. I mean, even if, please don't look at the code we write and use, but at least it's in Subversion, and it looks ugly, but it works for us. And somebody else could get it running if you really try to. So those were the examples, and I tried to mention already some of the points pertaining to that. So, well, another point on the copyright, did not mention so much yet. But the thing is that, at least for historical sources, it seems to be easy, because copyright runs 70 years after the death of the original author. And most of the authors we were talking about from 19th century, it's quite about okay. For cuneiform tablets, of course, there's no problem at all. And we have a big section also on early modern texts from 14th to 17th century. All these authors are dead, but still there's issues, because the museums and the collections and the libraries that own these books, I mean, I find it always problematic to say they really own it, because they're official institutions and somebody just gave it to them for keeping and for making accessible, preserving and making accessible to everybody. And now they say, well, we own this, and if you want to use it, then you have to pay us. And this gets, well, with books, it's currently rather easy. So if you can try to buy a copy of the book, of the original book, you can scan it yourself and just put the images out because you're the one that has it. If you have to lend it from somewhere else, you expressly, of course, you have to ask them to give you the rights to scan it and to use the images in public, which with books at about works okay. But it's really problematic in the areas where works of art, paintings, other stuff is involved. So for scholars in history of arts, it is really problematic, because there the museums really do not want to give out the rights. And they, for large part, if they hear you're putting it out on the internet, most of the time they do not have any scheme, because they say, well, if it's printed so and so often, you pay so and so much. But if you say, well, I put it out on the internet, everybody can download it, then they say, well, how many people is that? And $5 each. You say, well, millions? No. And so this is really a problem for them. For example, there was photography, I think a French photography journal, which exists in printed form, and they also wanted to put it up in the internet. And they could put up all the texts, but they could not put up the photographs. And so they said, yeah, there's no point doing that, and they took it all down. So this is really a shame. It seems that there's some movement, maybe making it easier, at least for research uses, whereas the problem is, well, how do you check that? And that, so the Victoria and Albert Museum in London is at least making it easier to grant permissions to use images and have a very low fee or being free. But there's other museums, especially for also small, very small museums, where they say, yeah, our funds get cut, we don't have so much money, we try to make money by selling the images. We cannot just give that out since it seems to be valuable. But as a researcher, you have to say, well, nobody else even knows that these images are there. So it would even be beneficial for them to be out in the internet, and so other people knew that it was there and maybe came there and did that. But this mindset is not so well developed. Although sometimes there's deals. There's one deal with about Islamic manuscripts, where we have scholars working on the Islamic manuscripts, and they came to the library, the Staatsbibliothek in Berlin, and they said, well, we will do the cataloging for you, because you have these manuscripts, but you don't know what's written in them. And we can tell you that, and therefore, and in exchange, you give us the rights to put up the images on the internet, and we will link you with that, and you can use the catalog information. And that seems to come off very well. So I think it's also a problem of awareness and business models in this day and age. Well, a small other point that I at least just wanted to brush on is open access to current work, so the work that the scientists themselves, so most of the other talk was about the sources, the work that the scientists themselves are writing. And as Michael put up in his talk a lot about blogs and putting up texts and thoughts in the internet. I mean, most of the humanities scholars are not that far on yet on modern media. I mean, mostly we're happy when they already know what the internet is and can use their mail and are aware that there's possibilities, but Also, there's the problems of publishing structure, because there's, in the humanities mostly, there are not the big journals and preprint servers and other stuff, so there's not an established culture of sharing little bits of information about each other and reading a lot of it. But there's rather, you research on something for some years and then you write a monography, so a big book. And then that book gets published. And currently there are no models to really, well, at least no very good models to really put that up with a free access model in the internet. So also there are differences in mindset and culture in that from the model the physicists are using. I tell them, well, yeah, I mean, in physics they always have the preprint server, everybody just reads the preprints, they get printed, maybe not, but then it's already late, and so that works very well for the physicists, but in the humanities it's more difficult so far. And also it's more difficult because the problem of peer recognition, so the scholars, young scholars, doctorates, postdocs, they say, well, I could put a lot of work into doing these online projects, putting in the catalog, the material, information, but what reward am I getting? When I'm up for a tenure position and the tenure committee comes, and I can tell them, well, I did that and that much work in this electronic project, and they will say, huh? And if I have not published books and maybe articles, but mostly books, then it will be problematic. And so if I value my time and I want to pursue that career, then I really have to go to the old ways of publishing. So also, maybe, well, we hope that at least in time this will change, but there are lots of roadblocks still. So I don't have the time. So then want to briefly talk about some of the technical issues, so to say, challenges, one could say, in the humanities. That because, so far, if you look at the market or software, well, we're one of the first institutes that even has a scientific computing department specialized for the humanities. I mean, most of the natural sciences, it's self-explaining. I mean, physicists are, of course, writing the software that runs physics experiments. But in the humanities, usually there's just the scholar and maybe there's a computer department, and most of what the scholars use or the others offer are email and a word processor, and problematic at that, and maybe access to the internet. And so both it's a problem of well, the authors, the imagination of the scholars, what is possible, what can be possible, and the solutions which are not there, because mostly, well, the people from the software companies say, well, it's not, well, what are you doing? You're writing a text. I mean, there's your word processor, there you go. So, for example, on bibliographical data, everybody thinks it's easy, the problem is solved, but it's not so easy. I mean, there are catalog programs for libraries, and there's catalog plugins for Word or other stuff. But if you're going a little off the beaten path, you're really encountering bigger problems. For example, if you're dealing with Islamic manuscripts, I mean, this is a typical title page of a manuscript. So there's lots of beginnings and texts about, I got this book from there and there, and then somebody else wrote on it, now I have it, and then maybe it's the title and the author written there, maybe not. Maybe you just have to look at the beginning of the text and then say, well, yeah, it seems to be this text. And so what we try to create, and all of this, of course, doesn't fit very well into the existing bibliographical programs. So what we try to construct is a database of objects, and we have, with objects, this kind we mean text, which is the abstract text of which there can exist many copies. With manuscripts, you usually have copies and copies of copies and comments on copies. And persons can be authors or can be copyists, or they can have other relations. And we try to be as flexible as possible with also the attributes. So the objects can have attributes. For text, it's also the title, it's the date when it was written, stuff like that. And the other thing which at least I found did not really exist so much in other databases, other solutions, is that we need very strong relations between these things, because a lot of the information is in the relations, so that this one text is a commentary on this other text, and this one third text is a commentary on the first text, which is a commentary on the third text, and that a text was created by a person. I mean, you could also put that in the author field, but if you also want to have other relations, like somebody was a teacher of or lived at the same time as, and another also important thing which didn't exist before was that I wanted to put in something like, for 30 years everybody believed that this person was the author of this text, but now we know that he didn't. And if we just take this out of the database, then some people will just come to the database, look it up and say, well, they say this person is not the author of that title, then it must be wrong. So we want to have the possibility to say, well, very likely this person was the author, was not the author, or we know that he wasn't because of, and so also our relations should have attributes and be objects on their own. And quickly come back to the relational thingy. At the moment, we're trying to do that with Java and object relational mapping based on MySQL. But when we started, if I had heard of CouchDB at the time when we started that, I would have tried that. But at the moment, we try to get along with the other stuff. But it's very experimental, and if you have any knowledge in that area, please contact me. We can need any help. Then there's also the area of images. So you saw that it's a lot of it is about sources, books, paintings, drawings, so image sources, which we want to serve out over the internet. So we need to do that effectively also over low bandwidth connections or for slow computers. But we also need the possibility to really zoom in and examine details, because it's necessary for the scholarly work. And other stuff also relevant to scholarly work is we want to have stable references, so that when you put in a link to the image in your article and it gets published or put on the net, and in 10 years, well, at least 5 years, it still should be possible to just click on that link and get to that page, and it should not give a 404 or anything else like that. And we also have other features, like you can put on marks to comment on things and send that to other people. And we have special features like scaling to original size. So when you examine a drawing or painting, you might want to know how big is it really. I mean, you can maybe look that up somewhere in the metadata, but then it's still abstract. So we put in a feature that you can calibrate your screen. So it puts up a scale on your screen, and you go with a meter and measure that out, put that in. And then you can say, now show it to me in original size. And when, I mean, it would work well here for some of the architectural drawings we have, which are 1 meter by 80 centimeters. And, but if you do that on your small screen, then of course you just get the one corner of it. But still then you can better look at, was this a very fine drawing? Were they using broad colors or fine colors and stuff like that? So we developed this image server software, which is open source and put up on Berlioz, the German SourceForge analog. So this is at about how an image looks like. This is an architectural drawing, as I told you, which is in the form we use it, TIFF image of 900 megabytes. And we scale that on the fly and send it to the browser. So your browser only ever gets a scaled down image that's exactly the size you want to see it, also when you zoom in or when you see the whole image. And then you can just draw up a rectangle like you do with Photoshop or anything else and zoom into that. And here you see, well, I didn't try to go to any extremes, but you can zoom in even further. So they have around, on this 1 meter by 60, they achieved 300 dpi, and they're still buying better cameras. But I had problems fitting, well, we had TIFF images of 1.5 gigabytes, but it gets problematic once you go over 2 because the tool chain starts breaking, and maybe we need to find something better than that. So other things you can, of course, do when you scale the image on the fly. You can do additional manipulations. So you can do contrast and brightness enhancement. And for example, in this thing, you can see that there was some writing in there at that place, and which was later scraped out. And so this might be relevant for a historical source. And also some of the scholars said, well, mostly you cannot really see that in that detail with the original plans because you're maybe in some attic of some library and the light is not very good. And you are there and you have to somehow see what you can make of it because you just have limited time. And everybody's handling the plans, and they're starting to break and fade. And so there's really much advantages to doing this electronically. And like with the other features I said, that you can mark here the little number 1 on the image, and then there's a function so you can copy out the URL of that image and send it to a colleague in an email. So all the information containing the mark and the zoom state and the color state is contained in the URL. So you can send that to a colleague and say, well, look at this. Do you think that's appropriate, or whatever he was thinking about when he did that. And you can also put it just with a link or some distilled form in a database. So this really was a feature which was easy to implement on the client side, but which has great ramifications. So also I know very few other web image viewers that have this feature. And also for the scientists, it was immediately convincing. They said, yeah, that's what I always wanted to do, to just point out things and be able to communicate that, because usually you have the problems when you're talking with your colleague about some image, then you have to say, or if you're putting it in a paper, you have to say, well, on the upper left corner of this, there you see that thing, and then if you look closely, then, and so it's much easier with these functions. So I think I'm skipping over the text bit. At least I could briefly mention, if somebody else is interested in text processing, we also do lots of stuff with text. So do some OCR, so we're trying to use the Octopus and Tesseract stuff that Google has put out on modern printed texts. We do some retyping, mostly in China, of old texts in Latin and ancient Greek and now Chinese and other stuff which then can be put in very nice formatting, so that you have the pages, sentences, glyphs at the side, tables and formula and stuff, and so then you can put it in full text search. And we also have, which is more relevant than to the nicely done text, morphological analysis, which helps, for example, with morphological search. You just put in the search term in its standard form, and then you find also all the flected forms in the text, and that works, well, for us, of course, it's important that this works with historical text, Latin, ancient Greek, but also Italian, English, Arabic, Dutch, German, French. And you can also at that point, if you have the lemma, the analyzed form, you can very easily link that to dictionaries. So for us, the point was that a scholar who is maybe interested, if he has a Latin text of the 17th century about mechanics, but he is not so good in Latin, then we can give him this text where every word is underlined with a link, and if you click on the word, you get taken to a dictionary with an entry about this word. And so at least if you have critical phrases where you're maybe not so really sure about the wording, because that may be a technical term or not, and depending on the time and the author writing that, it may be technical or not. And so then you can always directly get referred to a dictionary and use that. And starting on that, you can also do, we have tools to do term lists where you can do things by hand, which you cannot do automatically with the morphological or other automatic analysis. And for example, identify, really say, well, at this point, when he uses this term, and at that point and that point, he talks about the same concept, which is real scholarly work and which is also of great value to other scholars. So we need to find some way of exchanging this. And also goes a little towards ontology business, although I, at the moment, try to keep as concrete in the ontology business as possible. So for us, a term list is already some kind of an ontology, and but we haven't got further into that because we really try to do tools that people can easily use and that are easily developed and maintained and also produce results. Because it's really the case that if you present the scholars who formally said, well, I don't know what I need in computer stuff. I'm fine with typing my text and reading my book. When you tell them, yeah, but look, you can zoom in the image, make an annotation, send that to somebody, maybe use a shared folder of images or something on the internet with your colleagues collaborating. And you can really show them, and it works. It really is a big help for the scholars. And once they've used it, they said, yeah, that's so great. Why haven't I used it before? But it really is both ways. So you need to be able to sell it to them, and they need to be able to know what they want to do and be able to do it with the technology. So that was my talk for now. Any questions?
With a question, who want to ask something, have a comment? Yes?
How long did the development of the tool take, and is it also available under an open license and things like that?
Hard to say. Well, the image server, it's easy to say because that's a single thing, and you can download it from Berlioz, and it's GPL licensed. I'm the lead developer. I put it there. It's free, and also the other stuff we are using for producing these websites are also, I think they're all based on open source. So for the web stuff we use Zope based on Python, and have written our own extensions to Zope, which are freely available also under GPL license in our Subversion repository. But as I said before, may not be so well polished and packaged that somebody who doesn't know a lot of soap can just take it and use it and it looks the same, but we really try to get it that way when we have time to document it and package. And, well, yeah, for the time, I mean, we're working on this, the web stuff since, well, our group was started in 2002, so for 7 years. And it is always developing, so it's not that we say, well, we started here and then it was finished. It's always that we find some new feature or have to re-implement something because it has changed in the meantime, and so it's always more of a developing kind of project. So it's hard to say how much time it took.
Any more questions? No? In that case, I thank you very much. Interesting lecture. I have a few announcements to make. The iPhone lecture that was supposed to take place here at 7 o'clock in the evening has been cancelled. At 11 o'clock tonight, there is an unscheduled WikiLeaks discussion here in this venue. And the 6 o'clock lectures, Tempest, the election hacker, and Bits of Freedom, the relaunch, have been switched. So Bits of Freedom relaunch is at 4 o'clock in the 2 envelopes hall, and the Tempest election is over here. And the final thing, we really want more volunteers for everything. Bar service, for video, for announcement, running business, tasks. If you have an hour, please chip in, because we need the help, and it's fun, and it's free. Enjoy, have a nice HAR.